Minnesota and member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and a key player in the wild series of events this week. Senator Franken, you sit, as we said, on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Do President Trump's claims to you have any basis in fact?
No, not that I can see. I mean, as you said in your opening interview, that he said this is he claimed this is fact. I think this is just a distraction to distract from this very, very serious interference by a foreign power on our democracy, and the question of whether Trump World, his campaign, his business associates had anything to do with it and colluding with them. So I think he's just distracting, as he tends to like to do. And what you're referring to, the reason I'm here, is that when I asked then Senator Trump, now Sessions, then now the Attorney General, about revelations that members of the campaign had met with the Russians, what he would do as Attorney General with that. Instead of answering my question, he just said flatly he had not met with the Russians. And that turned out not to be true. And this is now another...
How would you characterize that? You've had a couple of days to think about it. I know you said at best it was misleading.
Right.
Did he lie?
You know, I'd like to... I've called for him to recuse himself even before this incident. I haven't called for him to resign, but he needs to answer some questions. For example, he said at his press conference that if he had just thought about it for a moment, if he had taken his time, he would have said that he had met twice with the Russian ambassador. He had 7 weeks to say that. He was testifying under oath to the American people, and he said something that just wasn't true. But he had 7 weeks
after that confirmation. But I want to go back to that, and you know, words matter. Did he lie?
Well, lie is knowingly telling an untruth. I would like to give him some benefit of that. He needs to come back before the committee and explain this. It doesn't make any sense.
You said Mike Flynn lied. You said Mike Flynn lied or either forgot. What's the difference there between Mike Flynn and...
He lied to the vice president. I mean, he did. That's why he had to resign.
Okay. Understood. But in that confirmation hearing, Jeff Sessions didn't.
As I said, at the very, very least, it was very, very, very misleading. It's very serious, because if he lied knowingly, then he committed perjury. So I don't want to go there and definitively say that we should be prosecuting the Attorney General. But I think the Attorney General owes it to the Judiciary Committee to come back and explain himself. And if he doesn't, and if I wrote him a letter on Thursday asking for a reply by the end of business day on Friday. He has not responded to that.
But I think he said maybe next week, right?
I didn't hear that, but look, he in his press conference, he quoted his conversation with the ambassador. So it wasn't like...
anything wrong with meeting with the ambassador?
There could be. But why offer that you didn't meet with him unless there is something wrong? And look, this is about, did people in the Trump campaign or his business associates, the whole world surrounding Trump, did they collude with the Russians to attack our democracy? That is an enormous issue. That's something we need to get to the bottom of. We need a special prosecutor.
You absolutely agree that they need an independent special prosecutor. You heard Michael Mukasey say there's nothing to prosecute.
Well, you need an independent investigation, and you have a prosecutor do that investigation. That's what an independent prosecutor does, leads the investigation. Because right now we have a large number of people in the Trump campaign, his business associates, who were dealing with the Russians at the same time that they're hacking and then releasing information. And not only that, they had hundreds of trolls putting out disinformation, fake news, messing with Google's algorithms so that if you Googled anything about Russia, what you saw was stuff from Russia Today and from Sputnik. This was an attack on the United States. And the question is, and it's beginning to look more and more like we certainly have to investigate this, that the Trump campaign was in league with them. And what do the Russians have on Donald Trump?
Well,
why won't he release his taxes?
I want to just very quickly here, James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, just said on Meet the Press, there was not a wiretap of Trump Tower, and he would know that. So just your reaction to that and having the president tweet the way he did.
My reaction to that is, of course, there wasn't. And the president asserting, like in your first interview, he said this was a fact. And anyone who knows, I'm on the Judiciary Committee, we do look at this intelligence stuff. You have to get a FISA order in order to do something like this.
And you would know? No.
Would I know? Probably I wouldn't know for sure whether or not they got a thing on a server or applied for something on a server. But the President of the United States did not tap Donald Trump's phone. I mean, that's just ridiculous, and it's a distraction. And here's what I want to get to. His own son, Donald Trump's son, has said in 2008 that Russia did an inordinate amount of business with them. And we don't know what they have over him. We don't know what the Russians have on Donald Trump. And we need we need to see, if anything, we need to see his tax returns. He said that he couldn't release his tax returns because he was under audit. First of all, you can release your tax returns if you're under audit. But he won't even release a letter from the IRS saying, I'm under audit, you're under audit. That's easy to do.
I think they've said those tax returns are not going to be forthcoming. We're going to have to leave it there, but I thank you very much.
I did not have communications with the Russians. Let me repeat that. I did not have communications with the Russians. As we all know now, that wasn't true. Attorney General Sessions met at least twice with the Russian ambassador in 2016, once in July, an event during the Republican National Convention, and once in September in a private meeting in his Senate office. But Attorney General Sessions did not acknowledge the fact that his testimony misrepresented the truth until the Washington Post published an article exposing his meetings with the Russian ambassador. In the 7 weeks between his appearance before this committee and the publication of that article, Attorney General Sessions had ample opportunity to come clean and correct the record, but that's not what he did. So after an embarrassing story in the Post describing undisclosed meeting with the very same Russian official whose communications forced the president's national security advisor to resign, Attorney General Sessions hastily called a press conference and announced that he would recuse himself from overseeing any Justice Department investigation into Russian interference with the election. So, Mr. Rosenstein, now that the Attorney General has recused himself, it's your turn to answer my question, the very same question. Again, here is the question I asked then Senator Sessions, and that I would like you to answer now. If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
If there is predication to believe that such a communication was in violation of federal law, Senator, I would ensure an appropriate investigation.
Now, Mr. Rosenstein, do you understand that you have an ongoing obligation to update your testimony and correct any inaccuracies or mistakes that you discover after you leave the hearing today?
You're making me very self-conscious, Senator, but yes, I believe I do. I'm trying to be as careful as I can.
Good. I must have just taken it for granted that witnesses understood their obligation to correct inaccuracies in their testimony. but evidently that obligation was not known to Attorney General Sessions. Yesterday, 4 days after the press conference at which he announced his recusal, and 55 days after his hearing, Attorney General Sessions finally wrote to the committee to update his testimony. In that updated testimony, the Attorney General references a letter written by the Democratic members of this committee on March 3rd. Attorney General Sessions said, and I quote, "The letter asks why I did not supplement the record to note any contact with the Russian before its disclosure. Having considered my answer responsive, and no one having suggested otherwise, there was no need for a supplemented answer." So it would seem that in the Attorney General's view, unless this committee has reason to believe that a witness provided false testimony, or unless this committee suggests that a witness's answer is grossly misleading or unresponsive, that witness is relieved of his or her sworn duty to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But I don't think that's how it works. And in light of Attorney General Sessions' failure to recognize his obligation to this body, I thought it was important for me to make sure that you clearly understand this obligation. And you do understand this obligation, right?
I believe I do, Senator.
Okay. I think Senator Sessions should come back. I think he owes it to this committee to come back and to explain himself. Because he also says in his letter, may I just... I will not, this will be very short. He says, I did not mention communications I had with the Russian ambassador over the years because the question did not ask about them. I asked him what he would do as Attorney General if it was true that members of the campaign had met with the Russians. So he says, I did not mention communications I had with the Russian ambassador over the years because the question did not ask about them. He answered a question I didn't ask. And for him to put this in his letter as a response is insulting. And he should come back and explain himself, Mr. Chairman. I think he owes that to us. Because this appears to me like he was, and I've bent over backward, not to say that he lied. He needs to come back. I've bent over backward. I have given him the benefit of the doubt, but he has to come back.
Mr. Chairman, may I... Sorry, may I just make one clarification, and I apologize, but Senator Franken's comments, I think, make it important for me to make this point. That is that I want to make sure I didn't misspeak earlier when I was asked about whether or not I would announce that an investigation was ending regarding Russia. I want to make sure you're all clear on this, that I do not know if there is an investigation. I don't know anything but what I've read in the newspapers at this point.
Well, I actually find it very disturbing that you did not read the declassified report on Russia's activities during the election. I find that very, very disturbing.